Hello everybody, my name is Manuel Estrada, Pastor Manuel Estrada, and I'd like to talk to you today a bit about what we are calling nowadays global warming. It has changed names through the years, but it used to be called climate change. Now it's called global warming. Now, let me give you a little bit of a background on how this has been taking place by looking at the Google map, and then you can see for yourself that this is not something new. This is something that has been going on for the past 4,400 years since the flood of Noah. I know we hear that the oceans have been rising lately, but they have actually been rising for the past 4,400 years since shortly after the flood of Noah. The first thing I'd like you to notice is this lighter blue area. It's called the continental shelf. Okay? Actually, the ocean at the beginning of the 4,400 years ago after the flood, when the oceans were a lot lower, and the reason why they were a lot lower, because we think, well, how could they have been a lot lower right after the flood? Our logic says, well, they should be higher. Well, so the simple reason why they were a lot lower is because there was no ice age. There was no ice before the flood. The whole earth was semi-tropical. The Word of God says that the whole earth was covered with vegetation, and that's proven by looking at as the ice is receding, we find tropical animals, we find all kinds of tropical vegetation in the North Pole. And that's no secret. That's just archaeological fact. And they scratch their heads, call it an anomaly, and why did that happen? And then they talk about millions of years, but no such animal. All right, the ice right after the flood, it literally used to be down to almost half the United States. We can see the scars of that in Gettysburg. Where the ice as it's pushing forward, and we see that in the icebergs nowadays, is that it rolls rocks with it, and it sets them up into piles, and then we see that the scar of where the ice used to be shortly after the flood. So it's nothing that has been taking place for millions of years or recently. It is something that started at the time of the flood or shortly after the flood. Since then, it's been the oceans have been rising, and as we can observe nowadays, the ice caps have been melting, and of course they are where they are now, and they continue to melt. One of the things you'll notice also is how Europe or East Asia was and Russia was connected with Alaska, and of course as the oceans have been rising, it has gone through. If you notice this right in this area right here is no more than 60 feet deep. Another thing is if we go over here to Africa, right here, Australia, this area right here where all these islands are, people wonder how did the kangaroos get to Australia? It's very simple. They walked over there. As the oceans have been rising, the ocean has gone over all these areas, created islands, and so on and so forth. Then the reason why the kangaroos migrated over that way to Australia is because everyone was hunting it down, meaning other animals, okay, like tigers and lions and bears and things like that. And they were the more, mild animals, so they went down and they kept flooding. And when they got to Australia, shortly, probably about 200-300 years after the flood, the oceans are risen enough to cover, and they were isolated, so they survived. Now, kangaroos are found in all parts of the world, but they only survive in Australia. So don't let them tell you that they evolved over there or anything like that. That's just flat out ridiculous. Um, if you'll notice, everywhere you look, the continental shelf, it's right there. All right. That Gulf used to be very little right after the flood. If we tune in over here, Cuba was together with Florida. Okay? The continental shelf came so all the way this way, right here. You see, this is all one, right there. Actually, this area right here was all one. See the continental shelf there, Nicaragua, Honduras. Okay? And the way is now by the international courts also decided what part of the country is still the country. Like for example, Nicaragua, this area is all still Nicaragua. It's considered internationally part of the land. Just like over here, it would be the United States, it's still considered the United States. Okay, and it would be up to there. Now, as the oceans rose, the current broke through, and you can see right there, and it filled up the rest of the. Now, if you notice, the level of water here is only a few feet, deep. The oceans have risen about 400 feet. They actually have a formula on how the oceans have been rising. And in the last 4,400 years, they have risen close to 400 feet. So there's no secret, and it's nothing new. That's just the way it is. This is what we can observe. This is what can be seen in nature, and we've been fed a bunch of crock so that we can believe the agenda of the New World Order, and we can embrace tree huggers. And we can protect the earth, Mother Earth, because we're destroying it. There is too much population and all this baloney that is all designed to usher in the one world government. By the way, there's 7 billion people, and probably over 7 billion people on the earth now, and they want to do away with about 6.5 to 7 billion people. They want the first commandment of the new world order is to bring population down to 500 million, and they say, well, with perfect harmony with nature. Okay, so unless you consider yourself the elite, even less than 1% or about 1%, you're probably on the list to be eliminated. So this is all. What they're trying to do, and we're close to it, brothers and sisters, so beware. And when they talk to you about global warming, keep in mind, it is not something that we have done in the last couple of hundred years with burning oil or anything like that. Okay, don't buy into that baloney. This is something that has been taking place since 4,400 years ago, shortly after the flood. So hopefully that'll open your mind up a little bit on what's taking place, and the Lord God Almighty be with you. Jesus is Lord. Till next time, God bless.